Welcome everyone. Let's jump right into these advanced prompt techniques, covering chain of thought, multi-role simulation, conditional layering, and more.
Yeah, this stuff is incredibly fascinating. How does chain of thought prompting really work in these setups?
Well, basically, it's about breaking a problem down into sequential logical steps.
Right.
For instance, if you ask solve problem by breaking it into logical steps, the system explicitly lays out each step rather than offering a single monolithic answer.
I get that. So it's sort of like the model is thinking out loud, right?
Exactly. It's like having a transparent process behind every answer and reasoning path. This makes debugging or verifying the logic so much simpler.
Okay, that definitely sounds useful, especially in settings where clarity and reasoning are critical.
Now moving on, multi-role simulation is another juicy concept here. It lets you simulate multiple perspectives in one response, say, debating a topic between two distinct roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
This creates a back and forth dialogue that can really illuminate different aspects of the problem.
So, you're essentially instructing the model, debate topic as a role versus a role, which fosters a richer, more nuanced discussion, right?
Yup, exactly. It encourages the system to explore contrasting viewpoints in depth. For example, it can simulate a debate between two experts on a controversial subject, making each argument more compelling and balanced.
That sounds really dynamic, though I wonder, don't you think it might sometimes dilute the focus? Because if the perspectives are too evenly split, could it lead to confusion?
That's a fair point. While it does open up a broader conversation, you have to carefully craft the prompt to ensure that the simulation stays on point. The balance between clarity and depth is key here.
I can see that. So what about conditional layering? How does that come into play?
Conditional layering is another neat trick. It uses if-then conditions. Essentially, you set up a scenario where if a certain condition is met, then explain how a topic would adapt. Otherwise, outline an alternative outcome.
Yeah, that definitely
It's like
adds
programming
flexibility.
a flow within your text.
Right? It's essentially coding logic into your output prompts, which can be super powerful for creating dynamic responses.
Exactly, and speaking of dynamics, iterative refinement loops are where you start with a basic idea and then build on it. For example, you might instruct, give a basic idea for task, and then follow up with, now add element, and refine it further. This technique lets you
Yes,
hone
that
in
sounds
on a
very
solution
methodical.
gradually.
I can imagine this being really useful for designing complex workflows or creative writing tasks where precision is key.
Absolutely, it's like sculpting. First, you get the rough shape, then you refine the details.
And what about dynamic variable inputs? How does that add to the mix?
Dynamic variable inputs allow the output to adjust on the fly based on shifting inputs. For example, you can instruct the model to rank items by criterion, then re-rank by criterion 2.
Yeah, I can see
It
that's
tailors
particularly
responses
useful in
as new
data analysis
information
and
is
decision
introduced.
making. That flexibility sounds pretty powerful for real-world applications.
Then there's meta prompting. This is asking the model to create a prompt. Like saying, write a prompt that would make you explain topic in a style helpful way.
It's like prompting a
It's
prompt.
almost a recursive way of getting tailored explanations.
Yeah, it seems pretty meta, if you will, creating layers of instructions that make the model introspect.
Precisely, and nested questions add another layer of depth. By packing multiple layers into one prompt, like asking, what's topic? And within that, how does subtopic affect outcome? You get an output that addresses complex interdependencies within the question.
Right, it really pushes the model to consider context more holistically. And then there's reverse engineered outputs. Sounds like working from the end goal backward, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. You basically give an end result and ask the model to work in reverse to figure out the necessary steps. Like saying, I want result, figure out the steps to get there.
That's like
It's
solving a
quite
maze by
creative
starting
and
at
can
the
yield
end.
surprising insights.
That's pretty ingenious. Although one might need to be careful that the reverse engineering doesn't miss subtle intermediate steps.
True, and that's where constraint-based creativity steps in. You force innovation within set boundaries. For example, design thing using only constraint in format.
Yeah, I
It's
see
a
how that
playful
would
yet
push the
challenging
limits
way
of
to generate
creativity.
novel solutions.
I love that idea. By imposing limits, you can actually spark even more creative thinking, right?
Exactly. And then we have cross-domain synthesis, which is about blending unrelated fields to rethink a topic. For instance, combine field 1 and field 2 to rethink topic.
Now that's
It
an invitation
encourages
for outrageous
interdisciplinary
yet
thinking.
innovative combinations, such as combining art and technology to revolutionize user interfaces, perhaps?
Exactly. It's like mixing oil and water only to find a new, stable, and unexpected emulsion.
Right, that's a bold analogy. And what about hypothetical extremes? How does that feature work?
Hypothetical extremes push scenarios to the edge. You ask questions like, if extreme, how would system evolve over time? This forces the model to consider radical possibilities that are out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's like testing the limits of an idea. That's compelling, though sometimes I worry it might lead to overly speculative results without enough grounding.
That's a valid concern. In practice, you'd need to ensure that these hypotheticals still tie back to logical reasoning. They're really meant for brainstorming and pushing creative boundaries.
Balancing creativity with practicality is definitely key. Now, finally, what's the idea behind the self-critique trigger?
Self-critique trigger is fascinating. It literally asks the model to evaluate and improve its previous response. For example, review and improve the last answer with flaws or missed assumptions.
Right,
This not
that's like
only
having an
enhances the
internal
final
editor.
output, but also builds a layer of quality assurance.
That really rounds out the toolkit, doesn't it? With all these techniques, each one tailoring the model's output in a unique way, it offers users a powerful sandbox.
Absolutely. These techniques combined provide an extraordinary level of control and creative input for generating, well, complex and structured outputs.
Exactly.
They truly push the frontier of what prompt engineering can achieve.
It's amazing to see how far we've come with these advanced prompt techniques. Even if managing them requires careful balance, the potential for innovative applications is huge.
Yeah, it's like each technique is a different color on the palette, and when you mix them, you can create something vivid and impactful.
Right, absolutely. Well, this has been a really enlightening discussion. Thanks for breaking it all down so clearly.
My pleasure. Whether you're applying these techniques for clear reasoning, creative tasks, or even refining feedback, the key is to experiment and see what works best in each context.
Exactly. Here's to pushing the boundaries of prompt engineering even further.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep experimenting and keep innovating.